So I believe we have stopped last time at topic 8.4, the Ottoman and Safavid empires. Page.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ahmed.
Good afternoon, how are you doing?
Yes, page
How are you doing today on this okay day?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you very much, Walid, for asking.
That's nice to hear.
That's good. What are we gonna learn about today?
Today we were speaking about
empires.
The Ottoman and Safavid empires. We'll start by the Ottoman first and then move into the Safavid. So did you open your books?
Yes.
Okay, so before we start, guys, what do you know about the Ottoman state? Where was it? What they were politics?
They were Turkish speakers.
Yes. And
they spread like across Asia and Europe.
And Africa also. So were they powerful ones, or they were not powerful?
Yes, they're quite powerful when they spread.
So is that good for us Muslims or bad?
That's good. We are proud of them.
That actually was big. So before we start speaking today about the Ottoman state, we'll just watch a quick video about the Ottomans. After it loads, of course. Loading. Yep. The Ottoman culture.
At its height, the Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents. The Sultan Suleiman, who ruled from 1520 to 1566, ruled over the empire at its height. He conquered huge swaths of land from the Middle East to parts of Russia and North Africa. Suleiman believed he was the heir to the Abbasids and Caliph of all Muslims, and under his rule, the Ottoman Empire grew to be one of the most powerful in the world. Although the Ottoman Empire was enormous, it was organized and fairly peaceful. Society was divided into classes based on people's professions. At the top were men of the sword, the soldiers who protected the Sultan and defended the empire. Next came men of the pen. These included scientists, lawyers, judges, and poets. Below them were people who carried out trade and production like merchants and artisans. These were the men of negotiation. And finally came the men of husbandry, the farmers and ranchers who produced food for the community. Academics and artists, like poets, found a prominent role in society. Ottoman poets followed Persian and Arab examples to produce famous works in Turkish. Painters worked on colorful and detailed illuminated manuscripts that were prized for their artistry. And miniatures with amazing detail were also produced and sold worldwide. Different parts of the Ottoman Empire became known for different types of arts. Cairo was known for its carpets. Artists in Bursa, Turkey, made magnificent textiles and silks with bright colors and intricate patterns. Ceramics from another area of Turkey, called Iznik, became renowned around the world. You can still see evidence of the Ottoman influence on architecture throughout the Middle East and Turkey. The royal architect Sinan designed hundreds of mosques and palaces. Many are still in use today in Turkey. The Sulamaya Mosque at Edirne has been called his masterpiece and is considered one of the grandest mosques in the world. The central dome dominates much of Sinan's architecture. Large courtyards surrounded by tall, narrow minarets are also typical of his style. The Ottomans dominated this part of the world for many years, not just militarily, but also in the arts and culture. Their influence can still be seen in artistic styles from the region today. How did art and architecture help to spread Ottoman influence across the world?
And that's our question to be asked at the end of the session. So we're speaking about an empire. This empire, of course, stretched far in three continents, starting from Asia, Europe, and also yep, Africa. To speak about the Ottoman people, we need to know first those people, they were Turkish-speaking people. And for the first time, those people, of course, managed to do what the other dynasties in the Islamic world were not able to do. They were able to take control of Constantinople, or what later was named by the name Istanbul. So the Turkish people, or the Ottoman people, they started to spread from this point and until they took control of Constantinople. From Constantinople, they wanted to go further and deeper. But unfortunately, Bulgaria just stood as the gate for Europe. So they, for many years, they were not able to penetrate Europe because of the defenses of Bulgaria. Not only this, but also the Crusade garrison lived in that island, Cyprus, and also stopped the dominance of the Ottoman people upon the Mediterranean Sea. Until later, the Ottoman people started to take control of that garrison of that island, and then they took control also of the Mediterranean Sea. While doing so, of course, they needed to spread the culture here in parts of Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, and also parts of Africa. So they went to take control of Damascus, Syria, and went down to Mecca and Medina in order to control them and protect them. As Sultan Slim, he was titled the protector of the holy two cities, Mecca and Medina. And later they started to spread into Africa, and they took Africa city by city. So actually the Ottoman state starts here and went to spread in three continents: Europe, Asia, also Africa. It was one hell of a civilization, and perhaps it was the last strong Islamic civilization in the whole world. So to start speaking about them, we need to know some information. When did they start, and who was the first emperor or sultan of that empire, and also what were the specifications of that empire. So, Monsieur Ibrahim, can you read, please?
Yes. Okay. By the 1400s, two powerful new empires had emerged in the Middle East: the Ottoman and the Safavid empires. Both were Muslim empires, and both ruled diverse peoples. Most important was on their success in part to a new military technology, gunpowder. For this reason, the Ottoman and Safavid empires are often called gunpowder empires. Gunpowder led to the use of new weapons, such as cannons that blasted through defensive walls. Later, muskets made a new kind of army possible, giving firepower to ordinary foot soldiers and reducing the importance of mounted warriors.
All right, so we were speaking about the civilization that had arose divided into three countries, which are the Ottoman and also the Safavids. Both of them, they were Muslims, and both of them used new technology in the action of warfare, which is the gunpowder. Consequently, we sometimes call them gunpowder empires. So they were the first to use that, and they started to spread across, of course, the world. So to speak first about the Ottoman, so let's start by speaking about the growth of the Ottoman Empire. Mr. Yusuf.
Yes.
The Ottoman conquer Constantinople.
Here, the Ottomans conquered Constantinople. Like the Seljuks, the Ottomans were Turkish-speaking nomadic people who had migrated from Central Asia into Northwest Asia Minor. By the 1300s, they were spreading across Asia Minor and into Eastern Europe, Balkan Peninsula.
All right, so first they were Turkish-speaking people from that area, Turkish-speaking people, and started to move into the Balkan Peninsula, taking control of Constantinople. All right. Continue, please.
Ottoman expansion threatened the crumbling Byzantine Empire. After several failed attempts to capture Constantinople, the Ottoman Sultan Muhammad II finally succeeded in 1453 in a surprise move. The Ottomans hauled ships overland and launched them into the harbor outside Constantinople. After a nearly 2-month siege, Ottoman cannons finally blasted gaps in the great defensive walls of the city, and it became the new capital of the Ottoman Empire, from Constantinople, which gradually also became known as Istanbul. The Ottoman Turks continued their conquest for the next 200 years.
So we're speaking about a sultan named Muhammad II, or as is known in Arabic as Muhammad the Opener, or Muhammad al-Fatih in Arabic. So Muhammad the Opener, he was the first person in the Ottoman state actually to open Constantinople, and he later called it Istanbul and gave it the title as the capital of his own empire. So simply, we're speaking about how hard it was at the beginning to take that city. And actually, this city is considered to be a major strategical place, because it's actually strategical also, because you're speaking about this city here is considered to be the open gates of the whole of Europe. So we have the whole of Europe here, Balkan Peninsula here, and its door or the gate is this city, Istanbul. Just like here in Egypt, for example. Okay, you have here Sinai, and Sinai is the axis from Africa to Asia. So Istanbul also played the same part, or Constantinople. Consequently, they really needed to take control of that city because of its location, of course. So after Muhammad II came Sulaiman the Magnificent, or as was known, Sulaiman the Lawgiver. Have you heard about Sulaiman the Magnificent before? Anyone?
Well, I've heard about Sultan Sulaiman, as in he was a powerful man and whatever, but not the magnificent.
He was titled the Magnificent or the Lawgiver. So why do you think you will title someone the Magnificent?
Maybe if he was like a good strategician, strategist guy, he had great intelligence and whatever, he would rule the country very well.
So simply, because he was very, very wise Sultan, he was a very good king, consequently they titled him the Magnificent. So let's know a little about Sultan Sulaiman. Saad Al-Ghamdi, do you have a mic? Saad Al-Base, Saad Said Al-Base. Who's Al-Ghamdi? We have Al-Ghamdi. Iyad.
Yes.
Oh, right. So let's know some information about Sultan Sulaiman.
Sulaiman the Magnificent. The Ottoman Empire enjoyed a golden age under the Sultan Sulaiman, who ruled from 1520 to 1566. His people called him the Lawgiver, while Europeans called him Sulaiman the Magnificent. A brilliant general, Sulaiman modernized the army and conquered many new lands. He extended Ottoman rule eastward into the Middle East, and also into Kurdistan and Georgia in the Caucasus Mountain region. In the west, Suleiman advanced deeper into Europe through a combination of diplomacy and warfare. In 1529, his armies besieged the Austrian city of Vienna, sending fear through the kingdoms of Western Europe.
All right, so we're speaking about a man who ruled between 1520 and also 1566. This man was titled the name the Lawgiver. I believe we have spoken about lawgivers before in the Greek civilization. Can you remember some of them? We have studied lawgivers before. Can you name one of them?
Can you repeat that?
Perseus or no?
Lawgivers. What?
Perseus يدولوز.
Pericles, yes.
Oh, yes, Perseus. Hammurabi.
Hammurabi, bravo,
Wait,
nice.
wait,
Rabi
Hammurabi
dude.
wasn't Greek, right?
No, he was not. He was Mesopotamian.
Yes, that's very old, not Greek then.
Never.
All right. The lawgiver that we have studied in the Greek civilization, he was Solon. And even now today, once a good man is very good in putting laws, we call him Solon. So, Suleiman also the Magnificent, or Suleiman the Great, he was titled the name the lawgiver. So why would we name or title someone a lawgiver? Simply because he was very good in putting the law and controlling his own city and country. And while doing so, also the European people called him Suleiman the Magnificent, because what he did actually was totally magnificent. He was really, really a good sultan, and he spread his culture over the continent of Europe, Asia, and also Africa alone. He was a brilliant general, Suleiman. He modernized the army and conquered. And about modernizing the army, of course, introducing new weapons, including the gunpowder weapons like pistols or even the cannons. And by modernizing the army, he had the ability to do such wonderful conquests. And also, he conquered many new lands. He exceeded Ottoman rule eastward into the Middle East, and also into Kurdistan and Georgia and the Caucasus mountain region. And the West also, he advanced deeper into Europe. And that actually was his dream throughout a combination of diplomacy and warfare, just like Alexander's father. So all the great kings use the same strategies. Diplomacy, if diplomacy didn't work, then it's war. His armies besieged Vienna, and actually at the first he couldn't take Vienna out, he couldn't control Vienna, but later they tried to go back to Vienna, but he was too busy in conquering countries in the Middle East, sending fear, of course, throughout the kingdom of Western Europe. So simply, we started here, Balkan Peninsula, and from the Balkan Peninsula, we wanted to go deeper into Europe. We started first to march towards Bulgaria, but Bulgaria acted like a defensive walls for the whole continent of Europe. Years later, we were able to take control of Bulgaria. From Bulgaria, we marched toward Romania, Hungary, until we marched towards Vienna in this place, Styria. And actually, once we came to Vienna, that's Vienna here, once we came to Vienna, we tried to besiege it, but unfortunately, they failed. And later, they actually didn't have enough power and enough time. And on the other hand, they were fighting here also in the Middle East to take control over other cities. That's why they stopped from Vienna and they went here back to the Middle East. They tried, okay, Vienna is just a very small city and we can take it whenever we want. So let's come back the other year. But unfortunately, there was no other year because he was super busy dealing with other problems. That's not mentioned in the book, by the way. Okay. So, in the next paragraph, let's see, Walid, can you read? Although,
Sorry?
can you read this paragraph?
Although they failed to take Vienna, the Ottoman armies threatened the divided kingdoms of Europe, which feared invasion from the east, while European powers formed alliances to keep Suleiman from expanding further into Europe. France tried to weaken its rivals by signing a treaty with the Ottomans.
So we found out that Sultan Sulaiman, unfortunately, he was not able to take out Vienna because I told you just right now that because of Vienna, yep, that's Vienna right here. So right now he started to stretch from Turkey until this place, but unfortunately he was so busy dealing with other problems here in the Middle East. Consequently, he was not able to go back and take Vienna. On the other hand, we have a country like France. France, for always had a very, very rough and terrible agreement and also relation between its neighboring country, especially England. Consequently, what happened was what lasted between them 100 years, which is a war. So there was a war between both of them, known or named the 100-Year War between France and England. So France actually was smart. How? There are some people here from that place trying to take control over the cities of Europe. Why not joining them? So France signed a treaty, okay, with the Ottoman Empire, only to help them take out England. But of course, this did not happen because the Ottoman they were smart. And not only this, because right now, once the Ottoman started to spread through Europe, they started now to sit control of the whole process of trade in Europe. So now they are the strongest. So they started to deal with specific people and other people no. So for example, they took control of Romania, so they will deal with Romania with trade. Germany, on the other hand, they did not take control of it, so there is no dealing between both of them. And actually, this led to huge losses in trade and wealth in Europe. So France was smart enough to make a treaty with the Ottoman state so that they will not first invade them. Number two, they will deal with them with trade. So far, so good.
Yes.
So French leaders hoped to take advantage of the Ottoman. Stupid they were. Pressure to weaken the Habsburg Empire, which included the Holy Roman Empire and also the Netherlands. The treaty also allowed French merchants to travel. Yeah, that's it. The treaty allowed the French merchant to travel and trade throughout the Ottoman Empire, unlike trades from the European countries. And that actually was a very good thing for the French people. So got the idea? Got the idea so far, guys?
Yeah. So it benefited both of them, right?
I beg your pardon?
It benefited both of them. Like the
Yeah.
Ottoman got the merchants and the trade and the treaties and whatever.
Yes, that's a fact. Well, in fact, actually, the Ottoman Empire, it had a lot of raw materials. A lot of raw materials. So, the countries here from Europe, what did they do? Well, they were smart enough to send their traders and merchants in order to buy those raw materials. So they put all of the raw materials from the Ottoman Empire and sent them back to the European countries. And of course, they did that with the money brought from America. Because in America, once America was discovered by Christopher Columbus, they started to steal all the gold from that and go back to Europe. So they used the gold from America to buy the raw materials from Turkey. And that actually, supposedly, it's a good thing because now you are giving me gold, but you are controlling right now all of the raw materials. That's number one. Number two, for example, the raw materials here in Turkey, let's speak about anything. Cotton, for example. Okay, cotton here, for example, is being sold for $1 piece in Turkey. So a merchant from German, for example, or from any other part of Europe, will come and buy it for $2 pieces. So do you think that the person who has the raw materials in Turkey will sell his goods in Turkey or for outer traders and merchants?
He will sell for whoever pays more.
Exactly. He will sell for whoever pays more. But here's a problem. That traders from Europe, they always paid more because they used the gold coming from America. And that actually didn't benefit the market in Turkey because all the raw materials right now are being sent into Europe. So I don't have raw materials to manufacture anything. Then I will have to rebuy all the manufactured goods from the European countries with the very high prices. And that was a very, very bad strike for the market in the Ottoman state. Consequently, we found out that Sultan Sulaiman, he just made an issue in order to stop dealing with the European traders and merchants. No one must sell them anything. It's not allowed for anyone to sell them the raw material. But unfortunately, traders from the Ottoman state, they needed money. They were greedy. So they established what we name or call a black market. And a black market is always the beginning of corruption. And we shall speak about that later. But so far, so good.
Yes.
So I need you just to know that France made the treaty with the Ottoman Empire only because the French people wanted to take advantage of the Ottoman. And also they needed to trade with them, not like the other European countries. So moving to the second point, which is that Ottoman controls trade. So by speaking about trade, according to this decision right now, so what are the routes for trade? If the
In
Ottoman
which
Empire wanted
position?
to trade with Europe, Africa, or Asia, what are the possible routes for trade?
Well, they could go through from the area around the Iraq right now and to Africa,
Okay,
and they
Iraq,
could do the same for what it was for Asia, and for Europe they would do it through Turkey.
okay. So all of them on land.
I think so. Isn't there a river between Bulgaria and whatever, or any kind of ocean?
Bulgaria and Romania. There is the Black Sea. Okay.
Yeah, but can
Today
they reach
we
there
are
on land?
speaking about the merchandise from this place. How can we get that merchandise from that place to France, for example, to Egypt, to India, or even to China? Of course, to do so, we have many ways. The easiest one is the Mediterranean Sea. That's the easiest way. Why? Because simply, if I need to trade some merchandise from that place to France, if I'm moving through all of these countries, will have someone will just rob me. Or, for example, we took control of Romania, but we didn't take control of Hungary. So the people from Hungary will not allow me to penetrate their land in order to move to France. So they're gonna kill me. So the easiest and safest way was the Mediterranean Sea. And also it's the same way to deal with Africa and also with Asia, because via the Mediterranean Sea, the Ottoman Empire could access to the Suez Canal and move into the Red Sea, and from the Red Sea they can go into India or even in China. Bingo from Japan and China. So the easiest way for the Ottoman people, they were just using or access to the Mediterranean Sea. On the other hand, there was some very issuing thing that actually did not allow them to take control of the whole trade, which is a Crusade garrison lived in that place. Crusade garrison lived in that place, the island of Cyprus. That garrison who lived here, the Ottoman, they tried to take control of that garrison alone, a long time, because that garrison had a very strong fleet, and all the ships coming from and from Turkey or in Turkey, this garrison here threatened that ship. So the Turkish people or the Ottoman people, they had to take control first of that place. After taking control of the garrison here, now they owned literally, they owned the Mediterranean Sea. Not only this, but they also started to make a very, very strong fleet. Many ships, and the ships were modernized, and there were guns in them and also cannons. And by doing so, now they just took control of the whole of the place. And now we control trade. If we need to trade with France or any of the European countries, any of the African ones, from India, China, whatever we want to control, we can just send a ship. But unfortunately, also, the people from Portugal, for example, If the people from Portugal they needed to send some troops into India or some merchandise, they will have to move via the Mediterranean Sea, pass into the Red Sea, and from the Red Sea go into India. But while doing this action, the Ottoman people they took control of all of the Mediterranean Sea. So their ships were facing the Ottoman ships, and sometimes, of course, a battle could happen until or unless the Portuguese people they found a new route to transport their merchandise, and of course that route was bingo, 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 around Africa. So instead of going into the Mediterranean Sea and then the Red Sea in order to reach India, for example, or China, all they needed to do is just to go a longer journey, which is around Africa. And by moving around Africa, they could access India very easily away from the Ottoman control. Following me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ottomans controlled trade. The Ottoman Empire controlled major trade routes between Europe and Africa and also Asia. As a result, Istanbul became one of the greatest trade capitals of the world. The Ottoman themselves, or the Ottoman Empire, strengthened its trading position by bringing merchants into Istanbul, particularly Europe Jewish traders, because those people they had control over the gold, so they have money. And actually, that was one of the best things about the Ottoman state because they just absorbed the multi-diverse religion people. So if you are Christian, you are Jewish, it's totally okay to live with us. And even you can enter our army and become a governmental official or even become a visor or just hold a very, very good position. Even like you can become a judge. So that actually, this diversity helped the Ottoman a lot. So the European navies had taken control of the Mediterranean Sea from Venice, but in 1533 Suleiman created an enormous fleet that dominated all trade in Eastern Mediterranean. Eventually, the Portuguese people and other European navies commanded a new trade route around Africa and ended Ottoman control of both land and routes. And we shall control about that later. The Ottoman government. Well, actually, I'm explaining too fast because, as you know, you are late from grade 8-2, 9-2. But that's enough for today. Let's watch just a small video about Suleiman the Magnificent in order just to absorb the information about
For just 67
doodling.
the banks of the Bosphorus. A man
By the way, there is action about the Ottoman people we shall discuss tomorrow. A very good one. Try to figure it out from this video.
stands on the banks of the Bosphorus, watching the flow of its waters. The past echoes through him. He had once heard of a great emperor of the Romans, a lawgiver, conqueror, a defender of the faith, a builder of temples to exalt himself and his god, a man who married a courtesan and shared with her a glorious reign, an emperor who dreamed of an empire that stretched to the farthest horizons. Was not he, Suleiman, also all of these things? But where was that dreamer's empire now? It was underneath his feet. Did he not stand in that man's beloved city? Had that man's great cathedral not been converted into his mosque? Would this Ottoman Empire too one day end up as ghosts of the past, as stories and as monuments? He was not sleeping well. His mind had been troubled of late. He longed for the counsel of his old friend Ibrahim. Standing on the banks of the Bosphorus, he remembers. He remembers the swift rider, the man on the tall horse who came to Manisa to tell him that his father was dead. He had considered this moment time and again, yet now that it was here, he didn't know how to feel. His father was Salim the Stern, capable, ruthless, arrogant, a terror to his advisors, with the slightest misstep meaning execution. But he'd also been a boon to the empire, pushing its borders further than any sultan before him. In the reckoning of the West, it was 1520, but to him it was the year 925. He was 25 years old, born in 900, and he was about to become the 10th Sultan, born at the very beginning of the 10th century, an auspicious sign. He called for Ibrahim, his childhood friend, a Greek, a Christian, and a slave. They would take the fastest horses to Istanbul, where his father's death was being kept a secret, lest rebellion occur in the absence of a ruling sultan. As they thundered down the dusty roads of Anatolia, he had time to think of his nation and his future. At least there would be no civil war. His father had spared him and the empire that when he murdered all of his brothers. His reign would at least start in peace. For 8 days they rode hard, and for 8 days he planned. He discussed with Ibrahim how they would lay the foundation for his rule, and how together they would navigate the Byzantine waters of Istanbul. Then they arrived. He was back in the shining city, the sublime gate. Within moments, he was surrounded by guards and functionaries. Barely off his horse, he was led to the tomb of Iyab, the burial place of Muhammad's standard-bearer, and perhaps the most sacred site in all of Istanbul. Then came in the Mevlevi Sharif, who walked up to him and, about his waist, girt the golden sword of Osman. And so he was tied to the prophet and to the founder of his house, and he was made sultan. With the rising of the sun the next day, he received the highest officials in the palace to pay him homage. Then he followed his father's bier to his final resting place, and there he decreed, as his first act as sultan, that a mosque should be built around his father's grave. He would honor his father. He would remind the world of the strength of his house, but he would also show them that he was his own man. The fear that they knew under his father would not persist. He gave a large donative to the Janissary Corps, that elite infantry that formed the backbone of the Sultan's armies and served as his personal guard. But he gave to the officials and the functionaries as well. He pardoned some, allowed those who his father had compelled by force to come to Istanbul to return to their homes, lifted a much-hated prescription against the sale of Iranian goods. Everyone would know it was a new era. But as he had discussed with Ibrahim, he could not let his new benevolence be mistaken for weakness. And so the executions began. Not many, and none he believed to be unjust, just enough to let those in the court know that the house of Osman was still ruled by a tiger and not a lamb. But his rule wouldn't go unchallenged. Barely had he taken the sword when revolt erupted in Syria. The governor of Syria marched on Aleppo, thinking he had the support of the Bey or governor of Egypt, a province newly added to the empire under Suleiman's father Salim. But the Bey of Egypt was a crafty man, and instead sent word to the Sultan of what was going on, all the while plotting to support whoever won the conflict, and to claim he'd supported them all along. But Suleiman saw in this opportunity as much as danger. He marshaled his armies and marched with overwhelming force to crush the revolt in the south. He showed the entire Islamic world that he was not a man to be trifled with, that his armies were as vast as the sea, and his resolve as uncompromising. He would be benevolent to the loyal, and merciless where disloyalty met him. Perhaps that's where it all began. He shakes his head and walks along the shore. And then a smile touches his lips, remembering those first heady days, planning with Ibrahim. With his southern territories secure, he could start planning his real dream. Where his father had expanded south, he would bring the empire north, into Europe. Late into the night, he would pore over maps with Ibrahim, who was now falconer to the Sultan. They would discuss in depth the powers of Europe, but their conversations always returned to 2 points: Belgrade and Rhodes. After the fall of the Byzantines, the Kingdom of Hungary alone stood as the bulwark of Europe, preventing Ottoman expansion north and west, and Belgrade stood as the gate to that bulwark. If Belgrade fell, the path to Eastern Europe would lay wide open for the armies of the Sultan. But Belgrade also served as a reminder of a national shame. In 1456, the Ottomans had tried to take the great fortress at Belgrade, only to suffer a complete and humiliating defeat. The Christians in Europe still struck their bells at noon to celebrate such a triumph, mocking the great empire to the east with each peal. He, Suleiman, would undo this shame, and in doing so, open the way to Europe. But there was another thorn in his empire: Rhodes. The eastern Mediterranean should be an Ottoman lake, with commerce and transport flowing freely and safely through its waters. But with the Knights of Rhodes doggedly holding on to the island in its center, serving as a harbor and a safe haven for Christian corsairs, his people would never know peace on the sea. His trade, especially the all-important trade from Egypt, was threatened, and naval campaigns to the west were severely hampered by this Christian fortress clinging to a rock in his sea. For 75 years, sultans had tried to wrest control of this tiny island from the Christians, and each time they'd been repulsed. But where they had failed, he must succeed. His dream of a European empire could never be realized without control of this strategic island. But even as he planned, the war he desired came to him. The Kingdom of Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, despite continuous border raids, were theoretically at peace. But the terms of this peace involved an annual tribute to the Sultanate. This year, upon hearing of a new sultan in the empire, instead of sending tribute, the brash Hungarian prince had the Ottoman envoy executed. Suleiman was furious. He had surprised everyone in court, all the foreign dignitaries, with his gentler rule. He had shown that he wasn't weak, but from this thin, pale lover of poetry and music, this tame lion, as they all thought of him, they hadn't yet seen wrath. Well, now they would see it. Now Hungary would see it. Now the world would see the Sultan's rage. Raise the horsetail banners. No one executes his citizens. No one insults his dignity. The empire is going to war. Quietly, looking out at the waves, he remembered the secret feeling of elation that had come with his anger. His mind started to drift to war to come.
And that was some information about Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, and that's why you call him the Magnificent, or even the Low Good. That's it for today, grade 9, and I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and see you tomorrow.
Yes, thank you very much and see you tomorrow.
Take care, Mr.